Here we go. Hey guys, David Robinson here. Welcome to the Apartment Investing Journey. I'm excited about our guest today. This is a guest that has an incredible amount of experience and has recently closed on a very, very large transaction. I'm excited to dive into it today. Our guest is Pankaj Sharma. How are you?
Good. How are you doing today?
Great. I'm excited to have you on. A little bit about Pankaj. He grew up in the apartment business. When he was 10 years old, his father bought his first 52-unit building using creative seller financing. As a young adult, he wanted to try to get as far away from the apartment business as he could, and was always looking for, greener pastures until he finally gave in and surrendered to his destiny as a business owner and operator. He brings with him over 20 years of experience as a multifamily investor and operator, managing his personal portfolio of 2,000 units in Pennsylvania. So Pankaj, with that being said, that's just a little bit about you. We want to get a lot more detail and hear your story. Sure. So if you don't mind, back up and tell us your story. You were born and then what?
Well, I was born. Well, you want to go back to when I was born? To the apartment deal.
I'm just
born
joking.
In India, but I came to America when I was about 2-3 years old. Grew up in the States. That's why I don't have much of an accent.
Cool. So, okay, keep going. How did you get in this business? Tell us your story.
Well, like you said, when I was 10 years old, my father did his first property. He did at that time, I didn't know anything about investing. He didn't. When I talked to him years later, and I asked him about it, I realized, you did a no money down deal. You basically got owner's financing. You borrowed money left and right, took money out on the house and just got the down, and the owner financed the rest. And, he recently told me the story again. I was like amazed at how his destiny unfolded. He got the idea actually from visiting a friend who owned a triplex. And he told my father, these guys are paying my mortgage. I'm living rent free. And that's when the idea clicked in, and he started investing in apartments later on. And since from that 152 unit, he's grown to over 4,000 units. And he just came to the country with a few bucks, not much, as an engineer, kept on getting laid off. And he wanted to create a future for his children so that we didn't have to work for anybody else, really.
That's cool. What a great example he set for you. So obviously his first deal was this 52-unit building using creative financing. And what was it that caused you to sort of want to keep your distance from this business?
I grew up in the business, and I was 12 years old painting apartments, always cutting the grass, always dealing with the headaches, you know what I mean? So whenever they could get me around the business, I would always have to do the stuff that I wasn't fond of. So I only saw one aspect of the business, pretty much, the headaches. So I wasn't seeing it until later on. As I got older, then I started seeing, I read Kiyosaki's book, Robert Kiyosaki's book, over 20 years ago. And then I started having a shift. I came back from California, and I surrendered to working on one complex that we had bought, a foreclosed property, a high-rise building for $2 million from the bank that had been foreclosed on. I was the manager of that property, and I had done a lot of property management too, way before that, growing up, managing the deals. And, property management is important, but it's not my thing. It wasn't my specialty. So that's all I saw was the property management aspect of it. I didn't see the investor aspect of it. But when I read Kiyosaki's book, it a light switch flipped on. Then I started seeing, the beauty of it. And I started seeing a whole different perspective of the investment side of things, and started thinking of myself as an investor rather than just somebody working for Pop or something like that,
So when you, growing up, you were doing the stuff that you didn't want to do, the property management stuff, the labor, all that. Did you go down a professional path that was outside of multifamily and apartment investing and property management, and then come back, or were you just always sort of involved?
I was involved to an extent, but I had moved away many times and tried other things. Worked in different industries, I originally went out as an engineering student myself because just that was just the thing to do because everybody else was doing it. But then I realized that wasn't my thing, and I took some time out. I went back to school later on and got a degree in communication studies, which is not a whole lot of jobs you can get from that, you know. And I wanted to be like a writer, a communicator, and so that's some of the things I'm doing now on the side a little bit. I like public speaking, you know, but yeah, I just worked a lot of different jobs in a lot of different industries, but nothing professionally in one track thing except for apartments and multifamily.
And then you came across Kiyosaki's book, Rich Dad, Poor Dad?
I read the Rich Dad Poor Dad, but then I read the Cash Quadrants really, and started seeing that he was talking a lot about multifamily and apartments and investing money and that type of thing.
And that was when the light bulb went off. So tell us about that process of getting back involved. Did you become more involved in the family business, or did you start from scratch and start your own thing? What'd you do?
I was already involved. I was managing that Highrise, and it was a foreclosed property, and they're not a good part of town. So like I said, you just deal with so much stuff over a period of time. At one point, I thought that maybe somebody else would manage it better because we were just kind of managing it off the wing. And so we got a property management company to come in and manage it. And I realized that they're not that much more brighter than we are. And I learned my lesson there. And I'm glad I learned it at an early age rather than later on, you know, because as an investor, I could be like, okay, I'm going to just take my portfolio and let somebody else take care of it. And I want to do other things. But I got to a point in my life where I was like semi-retired. Like I could do what I wanted to do. I had systems operating. I had people in position, and I could just, you know, I had a lot of time for myself. So I didn't have to like bust my butt. When I went from kind of the worker side to the other side of the cash quadrant as a business owner and investor, then I had a lot more freedom. And that's the thing that Kiyosaki talked about, and moving from selling your time to like, you know, being free, you know, and being able to do the things you wanted to do. So that was my goal for a long time, of just trying to be free. And I wanted to work as little as possible and explore other aspects of life, you know.
Yeah, that's great. So talk to us a little bit about that transition back into the business and how you, you know, got to the place where you're at today with a portfolio of 2,000 units. Obviously, you were managing that high-rise building roughly 20 years ago, it sounds like.
So we got the high-rise building that had 96 units in it. And then 2 of the floors were vacant. They had commercial space that was they had a fire a long time ago, and it was just empty. So we built 60 units there. So we were the general contractors. I got that kind of experience. And so we went from 96 units to 156 units, and we were able to refi that property. That property that we got for $2 million today is worth, I could easily get 10 million on the market if I wanted to. And then I learned the value of like it's really, when I look at the deals and I can look at the history of the time of, you know, what happens every 15 years, the way we have done deals is we've always done a 15-year mortgage, 15-year amortized. So in 15 years, our properties are paid off. And then when you do that, you can pull the money back out, you can refinance, or you could just use that property to invest in another property. And so that's how he's been able to build a strong base and to continue to build forward and build momentum and do a deal or 2 deals a year.
That's fantastic.
Regular.
So the business that you have today, your investing business, and I believe your property management business, if I have that correctly.
Right.
Are those the same business that your dad had started and ran? Or at some point in time, did you split off and start to do your own thing? How did that work?
My father's 80 years old now. So, but he still goes to work every day. He doesn't really, I've always been kind of the rebel of my family. I've always kind of been the black sheep and wanted to do things my way. I really was into the whole Frank Sinatra thing of I did it my way. And so I've always kind of like took my properties, whatever I had, and I would like manage them and not really bother him with them. So I would kind of do it full force. And I got my really good experience from the property I told you about, the 96 unit. Then I had another property, was 99 units. So those 2 properties pretty much raised me. You know, I've been able to, because when you have a property for a long period of time, you go through a whole gamut of different scenarios and different situations and different problems and different things you got to tackle and deal with. And you build up your skin and you build up your abilities to just deal with whatever comes your way, because, you know, it's a tough business and things happen, you know, that they come out of the blue. Like just for example, the year before, the one high-rise building, the transformer blew out. And the transformer, like the electric went out in the city or something, and then they sent a spike and it blew out the transformer. Well, the transformer was part of the high-rise, so guess whose responsibility it is? It's mine. But luckily, insurance covered it. I was just out of the skin of my whatever they call it, the nick of your teeth or whatever. The insurance covered it, but that's over 100. That's almost like 200 grand right there, $200,000, you know, of just a transformer.
Wow.
But you know, the aspect of not having electricity in a high-rise building for those many days, and you know, trying to get a generator in place and getting all that situated, you know, you walk through some crazy times, and you just get the smile and walk through it and just deal with it and not freak out, you know?
Yeah.
Kind of build that not freaking out ability.
Yeah. So you spent, you know, a good part of the past, or at least those early years, learning the business on those roughly 200 units, 2 buildings, 200 units. Obviously learned a lot, went through a lot of experiences. Where did you go from there?
So then we have in Allentown, we have 2 properties that those properties by themselves. The one we got in 96, and I was a property manager when we first got that, that's 293 units. And then another property we got later on, 206. So just those 2 properties alone, another 500 units. And so altogether, I had about 1,000 units. And then recently, we just bought another 828 units in July. So it kind of doubled my business, you know, doubled my activity. And no more semi-retired, working 5 days a week, you know, all the time sometimes, you know, because then I have other things I do on the side. But, you know, just constantly now coming out of a place of like looking for that free time, looking to do that, what I want, when I want to, being devoted to being a business operator full time and being in the game. You know, it totally changed me. This last deal totally changed me in that way of just saying, because you know, when you get comfortable, it's nice for a while, but then eventually even the being comfortable is, there's a pain in that as well. There's a level of suffering in just being comfortable and not growing.
Yeah, I'm excited to dive into that big building, the 828 units, $50 million deal. And I want to dive into that here in just a second, because I think it's got a pretty cool story around it. But you mentioned, you know, this concept of having some pain in maybe, I don't know that I would call it idleness. You don't seem like the type of guy that would stay idle very long, but talk to us a little bit about that.
It's either you're in life, you're either growing or you're just kind of decomposing. There's no kind of thing as staying still, you know? And so after spending time of just having time on my hands to do whatever, it got boring after a while. And at points it even became self-destructive, you know, because when you don't have I was never a set schedule type of person. And when you have when you like say the free idle mind is the devil workshop or whatever, but that idleness sometimes, I wasn't like idle, but there's so many distractions in the world today. And it's good to have a creative force and to have something that you feel fulfilled about. For a long time, people told me you got to follow your passion, right? So I thought my passion was something other than apartments. And as a result, I spent a lot of time, you know, kind of fragmented and not being fully present into the business that I had, to thinking I should be somewhere else with somebody else doing something else. And now I don't have that anymore. Now I'm totally unified in like, this is what I do. I'm here now and I'm fully into it. But just that fragmented place of thinking, you know, and going out and looking for it. Maybe that's my passion. Maybe this is my passion. Instead of just being passionate about what I have. Yeah. And pouring my passion that way, and then allowing it to come out in sideways and other side avenues as well. Like now we started the YouTube channel and we started that type of creative thing. So creativity is important for me. And I wasn't seeing the creativity in what we were doing because my father's way of doing things was one way. It was kind of like very black and white. And I think that's why a lot of times we would butt heads, where I wanted to live in the spaces of gray. I wanted to do things differently. I wanted to be creative. I wanted to have my own ideas. And I wanted to push the envelope in my own way. And I've kind of had a chance to do that. Once I went from just being a worker to being like an owner, operator, and investor, that gave me the freedom then to create and to be passionate about like building a team, to investing in people, investing in a community, you know, making a change, instead of just seeing like because I was never like I was never like really attracted to just money. Like money was not a big motivator for me. So for me, it was always about, it had to be more than just the dollar signs, even though it's very important. Money's not everything, but it's up there with oxygen. Don't get me wrong.
Right.
One of my favorite sayings.
Well, that's pretty cool, and it's interesting to see that when you were able to get back to that focus, you were chasing creativity, and so that's why you stood away from the apartment investing world, simply because you didn't, see an opportunity to be creative in that space. But when you did come back to it and you focused on this industry and in this space, it opened up new avenues for you to start to be creative again. And I think that's pretty cool.
Right.
Well, I appreciate you giving us a little bit of background, and I think it's always good to hear people's story and their journey about how they got into the space. If you don't mind, let's maybe pivot a little bit here and let's talk about this big deal that virtually doubled the size of your portfolio. Yeah. If you can, back up and just describe the actual asset to us a little bit, so we have a better understanding of the property.
So the deal is actually 5 properties. 5 properties. Each property has its own amount of, the biggest property is a high rise with 273 units. Another one is a garden style. And then there's another high rise actually in the deal with about 114 units. And that high rise with 114 units or 118 units, exactly, that high rise is why we got the deal, because other people were interested in the other 4 apartments. Even my partner, who's my father at the time, he's saying, look, well, we can just buy these other properties and not buy the high rise, which is called Bellevue Towers, because that really had like a really bad reputation. And it was a rough building. And my 96 unit that I told you about originally, like I kind of tried to steer clear from high rises after that high rise experience, but now we're kind of gotten used to it. So we were the only ones that could buy all 5 of them. Other people also wanted to cut up, and the person was only interested really in selling all 5. How
far apart were the buildings?
So they're all in Harrisburg, in a city called Harrisburg, which is the capital of Pennsylvania. And they're all like 2 properties are very close to each other. They're in a stone's throw, and the other 3 are close to each other. They're a stone's throw. They're all close. And the separation between the two areas is about 15 minutes drive.
And how many units does the smallest building have?
108.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, go ahead.
So tell us about how you actually sourced the deal and found the deal. It sounds like there were some difficulties with it.
Over the years, we built great relationships with brokers. And this one particular broker, he's with Kislak, and he knows, he's got a great portfolio of buyers, and he knows the type of deals that we're good to close on. And he knows like what we're kind of our reputation, and he likes to close. So he's the one who brought it our way. And I think, and then we found out that this person had been trying to offload these properties for a while. He never really like put them on the market, so to speak, but he's off the market, so to speak, was trying to sell it for a long time. And I think he wasn't successful. And my father's idea was to split the properties between me and my brother, because my brother also has over 2,000 units. And he's got like 8-9 complexes already in Harrisburg, which I only had that one. And Harrisburg is about an 1.5 hour drive. That's another reason why I wasn't too gung-ho for it. So eventually my brother was like, I got my hands full, you take the whole deal. And I was like, all right. I just said yes to it. And I was the type of guy like not to say yes to something like this. It wasn't my thing, and I just said yes to it. We went through, and the guy was kind of really pushing us to close the deal. He was really like not really giving us the time to really do a full due diligence and just kind of look over things and just sign. And he wanted to make sure that he had somebody to close the deal. And we came so close to signing. It was Thanksgiving of last year, I believe. Yeah, Thanksgiving of last year. I was away at Turks and Caicos with my family, and the deal is finally finalized, and I was supposed to sign it. And I got this really bad pain in my stomach. And I had this dream the night before about like water everywhere or something. And one of the high rises right across the street from the river. And And I just, I didn't sign the deal. I walked away from the deal. And we had went through the property. We had seen the leases, and the leases were like really, the paperwork was really bad on the deal. You can tell when you go through the leases and the paperwork's bad, and you know, they were just, it wasn't a strong tenant base there. And for whatever reason, we walked away. And everybody, the broker was disappointed, obviously, because he's about to close this deal. He's worked hard to convince this guy we're the buyer for this deal, right? So he's unhappy. The buyer,
his reputation on the line.
Yeah, the seller's unhappy, you know. But to me, I felt free. Like, oh, I avoided that big mistake, so to speak. A couple months later, in February, they come back. They said the deal's back, and they're trying to talk to us. And I'm telling my partner, who's my father, I said, these guys need us. We don't need them. You know, and I find out that this guy was very over leveraged debt wise. So we were able to drop it another $1 million, get the deal cheaper. And the other thing is the property management company that he had managing the place, he got rid of them and he had own people managing it. So that would make the transition easier as well. Because when you got a property management team and you take over, they're just out. And then you have nothing. You got to start from scratch. And then that's really tough. So to have people actually there that you can kind of help with the transition was a big benefit. And then the seller himself also was much more relaxed. He wasn't pushing as fast on us because he was really trying to close within 30 days. And, you know, I was like, you can't close a deal like that and that fast. We wanted a really quick closing and the pressure. And so he was like, you know, I'll work with you guys. He was much more relaxed. And it took a lot of months to get this deal closed finally. There was a lot, like hundreds of emails and all kinds of stuff going on until we finally got this closed, got all the legal stuff operated. And if it wasn't for the foundation we had behind us in our history, we wouldn't have been able to do it. And really, I don't think the person had anybody else. I think we should have asked for another $1 million. That was my price, but that's not what we got. And the thing is, it's so hard to find deals these days.
Yeah.
It's really hard to find like inventory, especially here. I don't know about other parts of the country, but here inventory is dry. And then the inventory that is coming up, it's overpriced. It's high. You know, when you buy it, are you going to really make money off of it? Or are you just going to be holding your money? You know, so with a deal like this, yeah, it's a lot of work and it's a lot of time. But, you know, the upscale is there. You know, you can really grow and it's in a growing area, which is important.
And so you originally started looking at the deal in, I think you said November of 2018, correct? And it sort of came back around in 2019, a few months later.
That's true.
And then when did you finally close? Was it July, did you say?
July 2019.
Okay.
So it was about 6 months ago.
Cool.
We closed.
So tell us a little bit about, if you're okay, diving into how you structured the deal as far as from a debt and an equity perspective. And did you raise capital or did you just fund it all in-house? What'd you do?
So we had the one property I told you in Allentown, the 293 unit. That property was bought a long time ago. The guy bought it. He was losing money on it. We got it for less than $5 million. Today, that property, it's in what, 96? Today, it's been like 20 some years. The property's worth over around 25 million value, market value. So we were able to pull 15 million out of that property and finance the rest, you know, the other 30 million on the property, because the property itself wasn't strong enough to hold the debt and carry the debt itself. So we needed to leverage it. So we did a 60-40 split where we're putting down 40% through 15 million refi and then 5 million cash. So that's 20. And then the property itself, we took 30 million out on it. And then you got closing costs, which closing costs for a deal like that is like less than 2 million, but over 1 million.
Wow.
So
it's a big deal. I haven't had anybody on my show yet that's done as big of a deal, and it sounds like there was some hair on this one too. So, talk to us a little bit about what the game plan was going in. What was the strategy?
Going in, once we acquired the deal, we hit the ground running. I mean, we just hit it. We had a little bit of money to starting doing fix ups. Luckily, we already had that, because I had that one property there already. The manager from that one property was working part-time at this one small property. I had a property that's like 73 units in that area. And that manager from that area really stepped up And then the maintenance guy from that area really stepped up, and he knew a lot of people. And so we hired all the people that were already there pretty much, except for like one or two people who didn't feel right. But we basically hired everybody that was there. Eventually we had a turnovers with all the managers. All the managers left, and we had to one by one replace the managers. But we started doing what we could to clean up the outsides and get the curb appeal up, fix up the outsides. And then we started working on the insides, but we've, in the in just a few months that we were there, we've repainted all the shutters on one property, done 2 major roof jobs already, done like a whole block of sidewalk. The sidewalk was so broken up that we just said, we're going to just do the whole strip, like 50 grand, just doing the whole sidewalk. So a lot of capital improvements, putting money back in, showing people that, we're here to care for the property. The property has not been neglected for so long. And the other company was just not investing into the property. And, our experience is that you love the property is going to love you. You got to take care of the property is going to take care of you. You got to take care of your people, they're going to take care of you. You can't just give. You can't just take. You got to give. And a lot of times the owners come, they buy properties, but they just take from the property. They milk the property. And then they just, in a few years, they sell it to the next guy. And then he's got to start putting money back into the property, or it's just not going to give back.
Yeah, that's an interesting perspective. And do you think that comes from the management side that you've experienced over the years? Because I think that, well, if you talk to a property manager, they'll often say that
money.
That the owners don't care. They just want to take, like you said, they don't want to give.
That's
do
true.
you feel like that mentality for you has come from managing properties the way you have?
Yeah, I think maybe that's what our experience is, managing it directly. We see what the property needs, and we're used to giving it. And we've learned from our experience, when you put money into the property, that money's going to come back to you. But if you neglect the property, you're going to pay at some point regardless. And if you don't pay when it's due, then that late fee comes along this way too. With deferred maintenance has a late fee as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so you're 6 months in. You've done a significant amount of exterior capital improvements. Have you started doing anything on interiors?
Yeah, I mean, we, renovate the apartments. Some of the apartments really were already renovated before. They had tiled kitchens and nice baths. So we just some of them, we take up the carpets and they had nice wood floors. So we refinished the floors. Inside is the next phase, more so. But more and more, we just wanted to flip the apartments and get them ready. But we had a lot of, a long process of having to clear out the tenants, because it's almost like they were just filling bodies up. Like, could you fog up this mirror? You can get an apartment, $99 security deposit. You can get an apartment, So I don't know what their thing was, just maybe filling it up so that the bank wouldn't pass on the deal, maybe, or whatever. But there was just a lot of people that shouldn't have been in the apartment in the first place, that couldn't even afford to pay rents in the apartment. So it's a lot of house cleaning that you got to do to clean out people. And then we want to kind of flip the apartments quick as possible to get money in, so we can pay these big bills that we got.
Yeah.
So we couldn't just go in there and just gangbusters, because you're not going to get that money back. You got to be wise about it, one step at a time. So my whole thing is, I'm not a guy with big major spreadsheets and got this whole planned out thing. It's just kind of very practical, day to day. What's practical, do what's necessary. And first things first, look at the top priorities. What do you need? Where do your needs the greatest at? Focus there, get that done, take care of the next thing. Very, very kind of organic, very kind of practical, very simple.
Yeah, that's great. That's a good, that's an interesting mentality from an operator. And I think that comes from, I hear this constant theme here in this conversation we're having about the way you function, which is atypical to, the typical operator, or syndicator, I should say, where you really are just a very practical and creative individual. And I think it comes through in the way that you handle these type of deals too. This is great. So what do you think, what does this project look like moving into the future? Where do you go from here?
Well, we're at a place where a couple of properties, this last month, 3 of the properties were above 93% collections, which is great. Really great. So only 2 are lagging. One's like just about 80%. And that's the high-rise building I told you about, the Bellevue. And we've done a lot of major improvements there with we spent 30 grand for just cameras, putting cameras in the building. And we've got a little episode on our channel about that. And that's made a big difference, just adding cameras, bringing in the light. And so just the 2 properties need to come up a little bit. And we're really at a point of stabilizing much faster than we've ever had done in the past. So I'm really, really happy at our progress in such a short period of time. And I think we're ready for something else now in a little bit,
What would you say is something unique that you have to deal with in relation to a high-rise building that you don't in other types of assets?
My experience is that the high-rise buildings, the ones that I've had, are very active. Everybody's coming through the front main door. That right where the office is. People are coming in and out. Nowadays, you have package deliveries all day long. Everybody's getting their stuff through Amazon and stuff, and it's just, it's intense. Whereas though the garden units, it's a little more laid out. People have their little bit more space. In a high-rise building, what happens in one part of that high-rise affects a whole skew of apartments. So it's in garden apartments or other those type of apartments, you can isolate things. But here, it's like one thing can affect the whole building.
And I was listening to one of your episodes on your podcast, Karmic Cast, correct?
Yes.
And you talked about this briefly, an incident where you had something go wrong in the building that affected the entire building, or at least a significant portion of the internet and everything else.
The phone lines or something? The phone lines?
Yes, that's what it was.
Well, this deal that we did, I've done a bunch of deals, and I've done a bunch of acquisitions, let me say. And I've never, ever taken over anything where the person was so delinquent in paying bills. And everybody was coming to us. All the vendors were coming, like 40 grand was owed on just the electric bill of one building or something like that. It was crazy, insane how many vendors were just left dry. And we thought that a part of our agreement was that he would take care of the vendors. And we saw right at the closing, that's just not going to happen. The only vendors that he took care of was the trash and the water and the title type of issues. He was not taking care of these people. So the phone company, I didn't know that if the phone company has, they own the phone number, to port it out, you have to pay them for that. So because he had his bills and the manager there was not that swift, she just told us we could just switch everything over to Comcast and we would kind of solve our problems. And Comcast couldn't get the numbers from the other company. So we had to end up paying them for the numbers. And it was just a big mess. And we had lost the phone. And without the phones in that high rise, the doors, the emergencies, the fire monitoring, all that, it affects so many different things. So we went maybe 5 days with no phones. And then on top of that, you're just getting shut off notices left and right for the gas at this building, the water at this building. Not the water, but, just UGI gas and different vendors. The water was a title issue. So we luckily, but even the water came back. There was a water charge that was reversed for $25,000. You pay something on a credit card and you reverse the charge. So that came, and that was a big headache I had to deal with afterwards. And I was just, it was just one thing after the other. Crazy.
So here you are, you're pretty much set with the 1,200 units that you had in your life. Things are moving along just fine. And then this deal comes into your world.
It woke me up.
And now you've the last 6 months, well, probably 12 months of your life has been hectic. Do you look back on it and say, man, I don't know if I should have bit this off, or what's your mindset on that?
Sorry. I appreciate it because it helped me grow so much. And it's really changed my perspective. And there's an excitement when you get the deal. And there's an excitement when when we're in the midst of the fire, we're like, you know what, we're never going to get to experience this again. This time is a special time where we're going to take this and we're going to rebound from it. We're going to get through this And we're never going to have this time. And it was things that we were dealing with were so crazy. We're like, I got to create a reality TV show around this or something, or start documenting this and filming it. And I started doing that. But once I started filming it, everything became like all the drama just like was gone. And I'm like, well, now I got these 2 film guys that I hired full time to walk around and film what's going on. And there's like no drama all of a sudden, which is good. I love it.
Yeah, you'll take it,
I love
I'm
the fact
sure.
that the drama was killed, but I should have hired those guys earlier. I would have had less to do.
You should have. Oh, that's funny. Well, I appreciate you going into a little bit of detail. That's a big, big deal. Something that a lot of people, especially, private investors, wouldn't be able to take down. And so, congrats to you and to your team for taking down a big deal and having it headed in the right direction. I'd take all your time if I could, but I want to be respectful of the time that we blocked out. And so I want to start winding down here if you're okay with that.
Sure.
I've got, really 4 final questions for you before we end. The first one. So, just looking for your knee-jerk gut reaction.
Gotcha.
What's the worst mistake that you've made on your apartment investing journey so far?
Okay, so that high-rise building that I told you about, the 96 unit that we turned 156, it had a flat roof. And years ago, I got estimates, and this one company gave me an estimate for like over 300 grand. I didn't have the money at the time, but I should have found the money and I should have got them to do it. Because later on, I tried other avenues. I had other people approach me with different methodologies on fixing sections of the roof, and then you could do it part by part instead of doing the whole shebang at once. And so I did a section, and that thing, whatever he did, didn't work out. We got another guy. They had their concoction of what we think we should do with the roof. That thing didn't work out, and I had to end up paying $500,000 last year to just do it right. So biggest lesson is do it right the first time. Stop being cheap. And if you know something needs to be done, but I at that time, I really didn't have the money, and I didn't have the wherewithal to understand all that went into it, but I was at a different place where the building was finally paid off. I had the money. I could just put it back into the building and take care of that one thing. But that was the biggest mistake I've made. That has cost me the most.
What's the biggest win you've had on your apartment investing journey so far?
I think this last deal has been our biggest win. It's definitely been the biggest deal we've ever done. And, the money's going to come back that we're putting into this thing. And where else are you going to get for, $5 million? You're going to get a deal for $50 million, and only $5 million out of cash plus the closing costs, another $1.5 million maybe. And put $2 million, $7 million, but you got controlling $50 million assets. And in a couple of years, we're sure that we could flip the deal if we wanted to, but we're not going to, because we're pretty much buying whole.
Yeah, that's great. All right, last question for you before we end. What's the best advice you have for someone who's just starting their apartment investing journey?
Get somebody who's been doing it. Learn whatever you got to do. Get somebody who's got the experience that's doing it. Get in their back pocket. Even if you got to pay them to do it, whatever. Get in with an experienced person, because what they're going to teach you, you're not going to get from any book. You're not going to get from any online course, even though those things can be very good and valuable. Nothing beats real experience and somebody who's really been through the school of hard knocks. Great.
Love it. All right. So I want to tell everybody a little bit about your business. I've listened to a couple of your episodes on your new podcast, KarmaCast. Those are great and entertaining. Your brother's an entertaining dude.
Thank you.
And so everybody go check out the Sharma's Karma YouTube channel.
Right.
And also KarmaCast podcast.
KarmaCast is now on, Apple. It's on Google Podcasts. It's on Stitcher. It's on something else. It's out there now, audio as well. And hopefully we'll have some more good episodes coming.
Well, this is a big deal, and your 828 unit, $50 million deal with $5 million out of pocket. We'll call it $7 million. And controlling $50 million in real estate and headed in the right direction with the project. I appreciate you being willing to come on and chat with us about it. That's an inspiring story. I think your dad set a great foundation for you, even though you didn't really like it at the beginning.
Yeah.
And you have a great story of coming full circle back into the business and taking on a big, big project. And it's exciting to see what you're doing, and it's inspiring. So I appreciate you coming on and sharing your story.
My pleasure, man. It's my first time doing this, and thanks. You made it easy for me.
Great. Love it. Well, again, thanks for your time, and I hope to connect with you soon.
Thanks. Take care.